when we're having these repetitive arguments over and over again about cancel culture and comedy and et cetera, you've taken a broad historical perspective. Like, what do you hope that people would see differently when they're looking at them?
You would be able to see through the horse.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that you can't say anything anymore. The
Yeah.
word anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
The idea that we're in any kind of worse censorious
Yeah.
regime than we were a couple decades ago.
You could make a very healthy argument. You can't say specific slurs anymore. Okay, I'll give you that. But compared to what you couldn't say as recently as the 1980s,
Yeah.
putting bigotry aside, just in terms of expressions of sexuality, criticism of foreign policy, criticism of religion, swearing on stage, almost all of comedy falls into one of those categories now.
Yes.
This was a really great conversation via Adam Conover.
Yeah.
You know, and all of it would have been taboo. Nikki Glazer, who I love, would have been in prison doing hard time.
Just for doing jokes.
Yes. 1962, Lenny Bruce got arrested in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard because he used the word schmuck on stage.
This is the correct reaction.
You know, there's this tiresome trend in comedy in which comics, especially famous older comics, the kind of folks I used to really admire, are getting paid millions to do big specials on the largest platforms that exist. And during these specials, they complain about being silenced and censored. It is, frankly, boring, but it's also part of a grand American tradition because for as long as comedy has been around, people have claimed that you can't do comedy anymore, that you can't say what you want to say. Here's the weird thing, though. A couple decades ago, you would get arrested and thrown in prison for saying the wrong thing on stage, whereas today, you just get yelled at the internet and maybe you don't get hired for another job. The fact is that American society is today far more permissive about every type of speech than we were just a few decades ago. And the strange truth is that the idea that American culture is more censorious, that people are stopping us from saying what we want to say, is actually propaganda that is being pushed out by the same forces that were censoring us just a few decades ago. It is a bizarre social transition that has taken place, and it's hard to appreciate unless you actually dive into the history of comedy and popular entertainment more broadly.
Please check out the full interview on Adam's YouTube page, as it's quite fascinating and also just a damn good listen. One of the best comedians in the political sphere who was saying stuff about Bush and 9/11 eons before the mainstream press picked up on it was David Cross. He spoke to Vox on the fallacy of comedians being canceled. If we think about it in less histrionic terminology, there's certainly a reality now where if you say something and if you don't apologize and you double down and then you triple down, then you're going to have a segment of your fan base react. And you're going to have lots of people who didn't care about you in the first place doing that whole performative outrage thing. He'd continue in the interview. They're just showing their weight as consumers. It's not that different from people saying, we're going to boycott this thing because they advertise on Tucker Carlson and I don't like what he said. People have every right to do that. We live in a capitalist society and that's how it works. So people aren't getting canceled. They're either getting their tickets refunded or trying to shame people from going to see somebody's live show. Who knows what kind of effect that'll have? Probably not very much. Lastly, he told the interviewer Sean Illing, I don't know anybody that's not been able to do stand-up anymore because they said something offensive. Obviously, there are people who have done some egregious things that have nothing to do with their comedy, and lots of people have made their feelings known about that. But if you say something extremely homophobic or misogynistic or racist or anti-Semitic that cannot be defended, and people go, hey, that person's appearing on Apple TV or Netflix or whatever, let's boycott the sponsors, then that's their right. But nobody's not able to do stand-up. Maybe you can't sell out Madison Square Garden 8 shows in a row, but you're still going to get to do stand-up. Cliff Nestoroff, a stand-up comic and author of Outrageous, spoke with Rolling Stone on the can't say anything anymore mantra. Whether it's Dave Chappelle or Hannah Gadsby or Matt Rife, that's when the phone rings. Also, when you're a touring stand-up comic, you tend to do a lot of morning radio, and I found myself getting asked the same question no matter who I was talking to. Oh, well, you can't joke about anything anymore now, right? I got so tired of having to answer that question because I don't believe in the central premise, he would say. In 1962, Lenny Bruce was arrested for saying schmuck. In 1990, someone was arrested for selling a 2 Live Crew album, Big Booty Hole. In 2004, Janet Jackson exposed herself during the Super Bowl via Justin Timberlake. And look at what happened. In the last few years, WAP became a hit song. The first episode of Euphoria featured like a dozen swinging dongs, and Pete Davidson, one of the most famous comedians in the world right now, has a TV show called Bupkis, in which he's, you see it, and accidentally, you see it, onto his mother. There are no FCC fines, no protests, no calls for imprisonment. I tell people about Bupkis, and they're like, I haven't heard of it. Is that a real show? He would also say to Rolling Stone, so the idea that you can't joke about anything anymore, or that we're living in an age of free speech oppression, is blanking ridiculous. He'd also say, far more taboos have been shattered than established, but it benefits people to keep going back to this playbook because it works. People say it's all indicative of an anti-free expression clampdown, but it's not. That's just what they've been told it is. It's all part of the same centuries-old cycle. Before I get into it, if there is anything that we missed, if there are any stories that you all would like me to cover, send them to me. I will throw up the graphic where you can get at me on my social media channels, whether it is Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Send me a DM. Let me know. So, where to begin? As I look at this with a wide-angle lens, it is quite clear. Any comedian who knows they're going to come under fire has used the word canceled in order to signal to a collective group of an audience who say they are the free speech warriors, who are also, coincidentally, in the middle of that Venn diagram, patriots. So what I find to be rather interesting is these are the same people who say they are against cancel culture. And they are the same people who say you can't say anything anymore without fear of retribution, are the same people that would make inappropriate comments in the workplace to women because you can't say anything anymore. These are the same people who want Colin Kaepernick off a football field protesting, yet also applaud Donald Trump at UFC events and what Sean Strickland does. It's the same group. Secondly, there is no such thing as being canceled. There's a way for someone to cancel themselves, like Al Campanis, check that out on demand, or like a Harvey W., or the allegations that came out about Diddy. Those are people that can cancel themselves. But then when a comedian, per se, says, oh, I have a great fear of being canceled, and then they say something that is unfunny, it's almost like they are making an out for, oh, this is going to be so risque, and it's not. It just isn't humorous. It doesn't tickle anyone's fancy, which is a terrible thing. And what happens when someone says they're canceled? They get more Netflix shows. They get endless amounts of media appearances. Their social media followings go up. And then more people are, in fact, interested in what they have to say. This is not something that exists. It has been used as a political football by the likes of Jim Jordan, who called for hearings on cancel culture. Does anybody remember this? It was insane. Live on C-SPAN. We're not going to talk about how people can't afford rent. We're not going to talk about healthcare. We're not going to talk about the wars that the U.S. might go into. Let's talk about cancel culture, because that is the biggest driver right now in our lives. For politicians, it's a distraction. For comedians, it is a success story after saying, well, no one likes me and I was canceled, when they're not. It's the same line of thinking that a Bill Maher has on his podcast where he shoots in his basement. It's not true. It's factually inaccurate.